Member John Lawless. Member Julia Liu.
Present. Thank you. And can we have a self-introduction, those that are here for the chamber?
I'm Alan Bailey. I'm a chamber board member.
I'm Dennis. I'm the chairman.
Christina? Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. And time for oral communications to address the audit committee on any scheduled matter unless additional time is authorized by the committee. All commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes per individual and no more than 3 minutes total. Do we have anybody here for oral communications? Did we receive any electronic communications?
You have one in the gallery on Zoom who wishes to speak.
Okay, please let that person in with their name and address for the record.
Hello, committee members. It's Brock Neely, address on record. The one thing I see that's not on the new agreement that is possibly going to be discussed is section 3 that was in the First Amendment, which is the requirement for insurance. I'd like to see that put back into the agreement. Thank you.
No, there is not.
Thank you. I'm going to bring it back. And first of all, I want to say thank you because I'm making reference to all the items that were sent from the agreement back in 2006. Then we had the amendment in 2019. And then the agreement that is a draft of what was discussed at one time and going into the dialogue and the conversation. And pretty much we're here to be proactive. We're here to be proactive versus a reactive because I think we have to have this conversation so that we can have the detachments and the understandings in the roles pertaining to this contract and to this agreement. And I'm going to unfold the dialogue here because as I look at the contract for 2006, the first agreement, and as I'm looking at the one that would be modified, the most recent one that has the date, I saw that some changes had been made in that this agreement that is in draft form. And anyone can chime in into the discussion. It's an informal discussion so that we can have some understandings to this regard.
So you're referring to the first one versus the final one that's on.
I'm
this?
just going to clarify the changes, go through the changes that were discussed, that I know that maybe there have been conversations that were done by previous, and maybe, let me ask this one for clarification, legal counsel. These changes from 2006 to 2020 on this draft agreement were made with,
Okay, so what's currently in effect, just so everybody understands, what's currently in effect is there's the agreement and there's amendment number 1. So both of those are still in effect.
okay,
So, and then the last thing that was attached is just the draft that I think Alan and I had actually started back quite some time ago.
that was a
So,
clarification.
yeah, so the very last one is not in effect. It was just it was a working draft that Alan and I had just started to work on during the, gosh, it was a while ago now, during the earlier stages of the pandemic, I believe. So, which you can see the influence of that on the draft, but it's just a draft.
But thank you, that was just a clarification, so that I know that it's a draft, but again, it's what is on 2006 and 2019, that is in order.
Right, so then they are, so everything that's in the original agreement still would apply, except for to the extent that amendment number 1 is inconsistent with anything that was in this. So it was just, and really it was just it revised and modified the chamber's responsibilities. So there are insurance requirements in there.
Okay. And I'm gonna look at Councilmember Carrillo because we know that, how would you like to prep this to go? I mean, do we just, I'm looking at it from the original to this document,
I
to the
think,
draft.
yeah, I'm not sure what everybody,
And
maybe just go through, starting from the, I guess, to look at the changes, what are those changes?
Right, so really where Alan and I were focused on were the responsibilities. We thought that maybe they were sort of drafted kind of narrowly with a kind of very events, like with events in mind. And now knowing that that may not always be what the chamber's focusing on. I think honestly, the intent was to give it more flexibility at the time and to broaden the scope of what everybody's understanding of and actually to also provide some ideas for the chamber. So it was kind of, we were approaching it from that standpoint. But like I said, they are just suggestions.
I have a red line version. Do you have the red line version?
Yeah, I think I do.
no,
probably do.
I went and did my highlights.
You did your own?
I went from the other here to over
Yeah.
here, yes.
Yeah, I do, I think the
I
name.
was gonna say that might be easier just
Yeah,
to go
that's
through the
true.
red line version.
Fernando, do you want to make a few copies?
That would be helpful because I went from this one and I said, what's different here? And I started highlighting.
Well, and it's there may be more changes too. I don't know. When I was doing that, we were really focused on that scope of responsibilities of both the chamber and the city. So that's going to be where the area is. There may be things that we need to add, some standard clauses that we need to add and all that good stuff. So you can see where we took things out though.
I did. I noticed some of that.
I took out a whereas clause, it didn't really make any sense. So just stuff from that standpoint.
In the red line version, does it have the amendment?
No, because the amendment was a standalone and I was working off the regular
Okay.
one. So we would need to add, but like I said, it was
Right.
only a very rough start that
Okay.
then we hadn't really made much
And thank you
progress.
for the clarification and thank you for that because it's from the original document to where the discussions were and they were just, were there board of directors involved in this one? In this amendment? I mean, not amendment, I apologize. In this draft.
So Martha, what happened was we had a discussion between me and Julia. Julia sent this over. It was kind of getting the ball rolling and then that's kind
Yeah.
of where it stopped. So, I mean,
We had another meeting
I
too. I think
mean-
it was John and Rob, I think,
Yeah.
right, at one point.
yeah, but I'd say this is what had been presented and to start, but there was no comment there was no comment from the chamber back. It certainly hasn't been vetted with the board and all of that.
Appreciate that information.
And no one's made any commitments on the city's part yet either. I'm trying to remember, did it even go to the council yet, that draft?
No.
Yeah, so I think-
No, no,
No,
no.
it
This
was,
is,
if I get two parallel courses, and I guess now is the intersection. So one was in the pandemic with particular promotional activities that had been customary were not achievable. And how, I guess the question was bagged a year ago, and that's how Julia and Alan started working together, which is, all right, faced with a contract which talks about promotions, which has typical activities that have been contained that aren't going to happen, how can it be amended to keep the spirit of that agreement? That was last year, this time, or a little bit sooner. I think it was April, May-ish. We were in the throes, we were in stay-at-home orders and things of that nature. So that was that effort to look at ours. So what we have isn't really achievable. And in the end, we have an agreement that speaks about activities to do that. And it was really to kind of begin to, and in relation to that as well was the thought that there are things that are called in there that aren't necessarily going to happen. Those are, the question of an Iris festival. Is that already, that notion was already kind of in question with Sutton having relocated out of state, and what was, so there was kind of a uncertainty as it related to the things that were in there. So there needed to be what were the thinking on both sides, both from the city in terms of, and the chamber from, we have this agreement that talks about promoting the community. What does that look like? And especially in light of what was hoped to be a short term that has continued and may rear itself again in the pandemic. So, but then secondly was the charge of the council and reestablishing this committee to evaluate all of its agreements. We have a number of them, and this is one of them. We have with a number of other entities that this committee will be working with. So this was one of them that said, okay, well, work had already been started on this. And the question's been said, how does this agreement look and feel going forward? And then I guess the question, and that was the purpose of the scheduling of the planning session, was really to try to find traction what that is, which I think there was not great, I would say not great results from. So it's all right, let's try it again. And so here we are today in a smaller setting, not in front of the entire city council, but in front of two of its representatives to try to do the same thing, which is let's review the agreement. What are we not doing? Because this is the charge that the council has charged to its members, which is to review all of our agreements that we have, lease agreements and this agreement. And what is, what are we doing? What are we doing right?
Thank you.
When I say we, both sides, is the city not doing this stuff appropriately? Glad to have Alan here because I know he'll hold the city's feet to the fire if we're supposed to be doing something and not doing it, and vice versa. So, like I said, two parallel courses. One being kind of the circumstances that were leading of a year ago, and then secondly, in the agreement that's currently there, what is it that either party isn't doing? Following, and then how do we, at a recommendation of the members of council back to the city council, how is it, and their recommendations.
Very helpful.
I know, I thought I did a pretty good job with my highlight, but
I quit. I was trying
I
it.
just noticed there's a little handwriting down on the bottom. So I think that was the suggestion from the chamber, the numbers, but again.
But
no
I-
good.
I was
I
just
remember with that
looking-
44 to $47,000.
but bringing it back again, it's good that we are all here at the table, and I'm very appreciative of the red
Yeah.
line one from the first. A lot has changed from 2006 to where we are today. What was then done, you can almost say that there are a lot of changes that have been made in changes and in things that have been done at one time, they're no longer there. And that's the discussions that we're gonna come to. As far as the amendment, the only thing I had a question on was that I didn't see on the change was the insurance
Oh, yeah,
requirement.
yeah, we haven't,
And that
but
would be carried over because I did see that.
I should have clarified that. This is really just, the
draft.
focus of this was just
Yeah.
the scope of each other's responsibilities
Yes,
and changing that. And
okay.
it doesn't include everything that needs to be included in the agreement.
Okay, so with that understanding, how do you wish to proceed? Do we take it as the verbatim of the document and go through it?
However you want to go through it.
Now I have an opinion. So I think this red line version helps, and I think we should just go through it all and then see what needs to be incorporated from the amendment
Okay,
into this.
that's-
And then with the chamber's feedback also and kind of dialogue those points,
Okay. And that's all.
if everyone agrees with that or is
Is
okay
everyone
with
in
that.
agreement to that?
Sounds good.
We'll go with the red line version of it and have the discussion, and we'll start with the of course, we're all okay. There were no changes with the first paragraph on the first page. There were no changes on the second paragraph. The first red line with the wording. What was deleted, whereas the city is authorized by law to approve the expenditures of monies accruing to the general fund in any one fiscal year for music and promotional activities, including promotion of sister city and town affiliation programs, and to promote and support activities that assist the general welfare of its community members. I'm gonna stop there and I'm gonna question Sister City because we do have a sister city, but that has been, when was the last time a sister city? They were actually here in Porterville, and when the city of Porterville hosted them, and if it was more engaged with the service organization that, and the city, I don't know that, because that was before our time.
Yeah, there's two, so you guys have two sister cities, right? You have the one in Mexico and the one in Japan, right?
And the one in Japan is actually, it's complicated because the city doesn't exist anymore. It was consolidated into like, so the city of Hobby was consolidated into the county of Hamamatsu.
Oh,
It'd be like Porterville going away and it becoming known as Tulare.
oh, interesting.
They have
Yeah,
a-
that is definitely, that language in there is definitely carryover old language. That was in the prior agreement. And it was definitely a focus at the time of the administration when this was drafted, for sure, because I remember that. There was a much more active kind of relationship, at least between La Barca and Porterville, for sure. So, but you're right, we don't necessarily have to have that language in there. This is, of course, just a whereas clause anyway, so it's just kind of stating, really the purpose of this clause was to state sort of the general authority upon which we can enter into this agreement, which is why I actually took out the government code section, because I don't really think that government code section is appropriate. So, but I specifically wanted to remove that. But yeah, if you guys are wanting to make that whereas clause more general or not have the inclusion of the sister city stuff, that certainly is something we can consider. It's not doesn't have to be in there. So,
How do you feel about that?
For me, I didn't understand what that meant, that language. So thank you for that. I don't feel like it's
Okay, because that was,
necessary.
and what does the chamber feel about that?
I mean, we don't have the authorization to say, yeah, up and down, as you mentioned, we don't have everybody here to talk about that. If you want to take it out, I wouldn't see why there would be a problem with
I
that.
don't think it would preclude it if we wanted to just do something with regard to this. It doesn't preclude us never being able to
because
do
it-
anything with regard to promoting the sister city.
No, because it doesn't
So-
preclude it, because I believe that the wording following in town affiliation programs and to promote would cover it most. So if we take out of sister city, promotion of town. Okay,
Programs affiliated with the town or something to that effect, including promotion.
and town affiliation programs.
Yeah, promotion of town affiliated programs, maybe. City affiliated programs.
And this used to be I would say, a strong focus
At that
of the
time.
League of California Cities,
Yeah,
which is not as much anymore. I can't,
Yeah.
I mean, the
it's really indicative of the time. that this
That's
was-
what
this
I
was entered
thought,
into.
I
because
mean,
it
there were
was
trips
years
to, there was a
ago.
trip to La Barca before it was
Mhm.
fixed.
And then
which-
LaBarca came here, right? I know
Yes,
that there's,
yes,
there was, they
yes.
went back and, I mean, and it was a big deal at the time, but it's, there is not nearly as much of a focus on that. as There was.
I'm not
Okay.
gonna say it shouldn't be, but I
Right.
guess
It
it's
could come
back.
not
It could
been-
come up. All right, and then we go into the next paragraph, and whereas the chamber is actively engaged in promoting civic, social, and cultural events, programs, and activities, and is organized, equipped, and capable of conducting activities on behalf of and or benefiting the city. I'll stop right there. I don't have a problem with that.
I don't see anything.
Okay. And we'll go on to the next one. Whereas it is not the intent of the city to fully underwrite, subsidize, or sponsor any particular program or activity, but to provide contributing support towards the maintenance and continuance of certain existing programs and activities of the chamber, which best achieve lawful objectives of the city. I don't need a clarification on that. Did you, Councilmember Carrillo?
No,
You're okay with
I'm
that?
okay with that.
All right,
Can I ask just
sure, go ahead.
for the lawyers?
Sure.
So it says not the intent to fully underwrite, subsidize, or sponsor, but does that mean to some extent?
I think it means to some extent that it can be helped for that. I think you're correct. I mean, I don't know, Alan, was that yours or my writing? I don't remember anymore. I think it might have been yours. So, but I would read that.
I
to not
don't-
Fully underwrite.
Again, I don't think that any of these notes were mine. I could be wrong about that, but I don't recall making any of those.
Well, I think that becomes one of the core questions,
Yeah.
which is, what is it? You know, from a community promotion standpoint, what is it? That, and it gets, maybe I'm cart before the horse a little bit. There's language that comes up that talks about that this shall be reviewed by the city council in a report afterwards, which then is, okay, it's kind of before this is when it was an annual deal, which is, all right, did that meet everybody's expectations for community promotions? Yeah, it did. Well, then here's $35,000. And that's how it, I mean, and then we'll get there, but I guess it speaks to that, which is, you know, we have a contract, you're gonna go do this, and you're gonna provide a report of all the stuff that you did, and that's a lot of after the fact faith. I guess that feels that way. So I guess that becomes one of the, I would say, one of the underlying questions. What is it you're promoting, and is that activity one that we find value? I guess that's
Yeah.
the core question.
Okay.
I think the idea, though, for the purposes of that section is that the money that the city's contributing can go partially to fund just about any of those activities, but it's not really intended that it's for a specific activity or going all to one. It's really supposed to be general support to assist with overall with the chamber's activities. At least that's what my understanding of that was.
Now, therefore, it is hereby agreed as follows. Chamber responsibilities. The chamber shall undertake or maintain a variety of programs and activities every year that support the cities and its mutual goals of assisting and benefiting the Porterville community. These can include, but are not limited to, the following. A, continue to carry on programs and promotional activities that include informational solicitations, information tools, referral services, and the Visitor Information Bureau. Question on that. Who is the Visitor Information Bureau?
I mean, the chamber distributes these materials, uses staff time to promote these things, Mighty 190, doing business in Porterville, fields phone calls on behalf of people who are interested in the city, and takes time to do those things. Basically what Christina does on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you.
Sometimes heard it called the welcome mat ordinance, right? That's what what
Yeah.
it's typically from a philosophical standpoint, supposed to be, you talk about the maps and people coming. And I think there's also there's a couple different ways that this is manifesting itself, but the competition between paper and technology
Yeah.
and in different demographics or people's levels of comfort, and you say, well, the map's available online at such and such a place, but that's not the paper one that I want or have always had, so. And that can be from other countries too, so, that's a great example of, and I don't know when the last time the city map, I mean, typically that's been an activity of the chamber. It's been probably.
We're in the works of getting a new one, but finding one was hard, so it's been a while.
Yeah, that you have that online versus, which we've done stuff electronically, I would call it, wayfinding, is that the word I'm looking for? Whether it's 9190 or just here in Porterville, and, what are the different. But again, that's all digital, not tactile like some people.
And excuse me, I apologize. And that's where what was done back here is different now, because a lot of people have done with the technology, and yet you have a population that still wants to have their hard copy. And those are the ones that sometimes raise concern because they're not getting the information and they don't have access to the technology. So I'm
But
okay.
it's also I mean, we do have a website, plans to update said website. I mean, but these are things that again, take staff time to develop and promote, but it also gives people who are looking for that information kind of a one-stop place to access that.
All right, number 2, holiday advertising campaigns and the design and construction of a portable booth for the Tulare County Fair. I don't have a problem with that.
Does that actually happen?
I haven't participated in it yet.
I don't know.
I haven't
It's a
gotten to
question.
that, but I don't.
I think
It didn't happen this year.
This is definitely a carryover. It used to.
Yeah.
but
Okay.
It
Are
still
there
does.
community booths at the Tulare County Fair?
I think you're getting blank stares from the
Oh,
board
there's a
that's
lot
present
in
here.
the few board
I
members.
would say there has been, at one point, there was a chamber booth. And I know that there was difficulty in staffing the booth, and so I am not sure, even prior to most recently, if there was a chamber booth in the last couple of years prior to COVID. I think it's because of the same logistical issues.
Well, this is
Well-
what we have an agreement that says that you're gonna do this and it's not happening. So then the question is,
Well,
this goes to the ultimate.
But what we
And
put
I'm
in
not-
here,
I'm
we
not throwing
said
stones.
that
I'm just
can
saying this is-
include, but is not limited to. So it's not, I think we were trying to, I agree.
You want to take it out, we'll take it out.
Drive a hard bargain, John.
But maybe you should say.
Well,
I'm gonna make an assumption. I don't know. This gets to the crux, I think, of the issue, which is if the city has an agreement with the chamber to pay for promoting the community, take the money aside, what is it, those activities?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, it used to be that the cities actually had, all the cities had
All
booths
of
at the
the
Tulare
Tulare
County Fair.
County
I don't know
Fair.
if they're still doing that. I remember though that it used to. So, and then also civic organizations could do it too. And so that might be part of what was intended there. It was like, but you're right. Yeah. Why not the Porterville Fair if you're gonna do that?
Raise the question.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, though, that this would be a good chance to say, maybe this isn't the specific item we should have in there. Should we revise it? Should we update it, or should we take it out? Even it says not limited to,
Yeah.
but if there's something that, I mean, I think if you
Well,
feel
is there
shouldn't
another-
be
is
in there,
Some other, because this would have been.
this would be a
the
good
county-
time.
The one thing that brings all the county together is the county fair. Is there another event?
World Ag Expo.
I mean, I think as we
Well,
sit,
there you go. That's a great.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Historically, the chamber has participated in the World Ag Expo through Sequoia. Training
have.
Council.
They have the World Ag Expo.
I think there's more participation now at the World Ag Expo
they
from
are.
that kind of stuff than there is at the Tulare County Fair.
we changing it to the World Ag Expo? I'm looking at Councilmember Carrillo.
Well,
Well-
I would like the chamber to be okay with it also, or have feedback, because
Exactly,
otherwise we're gonna have
exactly.
an agreement.
Because this is something that was brought.
Well, I mean, the problem there is.
Because I'll say yes.
The problem there is we're being asked to do something we don't even know if we'll be allowed to do. What's the cost of having a booth there? What, I mean, as long as it's something that we're saying, hey, these are kind of general ideas of what we would like to see. But we're not going to say, well, you didn't do that, so you breached the agreement. And I mean, that's.
Want to make it more generalized?
Well,
Like,
but that's what I mean. It is general in that, but if there's some kind of direction and it's saying, well, why don't you look into this? I mean, we can look into it, but we just can't make a commitment right now without knowing what the reality on the ground is.
like regional fairs and expositions or something. Rather than being so specific.
I have a question. I don't know if it's the appropriate time right now,
Go ahead,
but,
she'll tell you if we can.
okay. Well, I know the last agreement was really specific. Also, it had like very specific events. Obviously, this past year to now going into the second one is making it hard for all these events, but and then John mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that we get a summary or annual report at the end, and that's when the financial part is, we give them money at the end when they turn that report. But my,
Used to.
That's what it used to be.
Was done before.
That was the other change in the amendment, was that it went to quarterly payments instead of an annual
Okay.
payment. So it was split up, and it was typically done at the end of that quarterly activities report.
so, and the report's done quarterly then.
But it's not, it's a little bit different. So according to the wording, it's actually activity report. There's an annual, very formal, much more formalized financial report that has to be provided annually.
Okay.
But I think with the activities report, there was some expectation, at least from prior council, that some financial information be provided as well. At each
Quarterly?
phase. Yes.
Okay. I was wondering, as we're going through this, if it would be helpful to do like a plan at the beginning, if they submitted like a plan of what, because we'll have this agreement is updated every, what will it be, every year?
As
3 years?
determined, I mean,
Okay.
again, that can also go.
The agreement says it can be modified at any time. And
Annually.
it's usually supposed to be looking at annually, and then because it talks about compensation going up or down on an annual basis and a review of the activities. But you raise an interesting. I talked about it being after, kind of an after action.
Yes.
So we have two talk, which is structured legally the same way. They are an oversight after the fact committee. Did you spend the money how you say you would spend it? That got us into some hearings on expenditure of funds that the city council in the end said, how do we avoid this happening in the future? So what we do now, even though with two talk, is that we present our expenditure plan. This is how we're going to spend the money in the next fiscal year. Is there anything in here that gives you any heartburn so that we don't spend the money over the next year and then a year
And then you're
later,
not happy.
and then it's an after, and then I didn't like that $200,000 expenditure on the library. That's what happened. It was a $200,000 expenditure on a library plan that was paid for out of Measure H, which at the end of it, the two-talk committee said, we don't think that was an appropriate use of Measure H funds. We had a big public hearing and the city council made a finding saying, okay, we won't pay out Measure H for the library plan. So it was paid for out of the general fund. And I use that analogy, which is there's a lot of faith and promises about, we're going to go along with this. So here's what our plan is for this next year. How do we, which I think is kind of could be one of the purposes of this meeting, which is what is it that's happening or what's envisioned?
Like, I don't want to add another layer that wouldn't help either side, but I was just thinking if there, if this agreement stands and then something you said about being so specific that we're saying you will be at the Tulare County Fair, but maybe it adjusted that year. Maybe it's still, we're transitioning out of COVID, but not fully. And you see very specific events that are going to be more beneficial for the city and the chamber. So you want to do those. And then maybe next year, everything's flourishing and back to normal as we can be, then you would want to be, adjust it. But at least we would know at the beginning of the year, then at the end of the year or quarterly, those wouldn't be surprising or disappointing to anyone. That's kind of what I was thinking. I think that way you would have a little more flexibility, and then we would know right at the beginning of the year, oh, well, they're not doing that event because they said this one was more beneficial or, at that time.
So you want annual activity report and then a plan for the future year?
That was just a
Well,
suggestion idea.
Not a bad idea. It's one way that avoided, I mean, we haven't run across this yet, but where there's, we're not happy with what happened, so therefore withhold payment.
Mhm.
Technically, it's kind of stated that way, that there's a presentation, end of year report, and that sort of thing. I think what's, and in the amendment, it spoke to break, instead of, I would say, that faith and promise, a little bit of waiting to the very end for the 35,000 at the culmination of activities, was to make progress payments, so to speak, on a quarterly basis, help cash flow for the chamber. And in the end, with the final ending of the report. So, I think there's always, I would say, I think there's merits that the council members, that's goal setting. I mean, you probably do the same thing at the chamber. What are we gonna do this next year? What's the task?
Mhm.
So,
And I think it would just be replicating something that you already have on a smaller level of that fits the agreement of what's being requested.
So you're wanting annual or quarterly?
I think what I was thinking is annual, like a plan, goals even,
Mhm.
a few goals for what the chamber would do according to this agreement. And then provide those quarterly updates, like, hey, on those goals, this is what we've done so far. And then at the end, just a summary of anything that was finished or not and why, which we would have all been updated because we would have got those quarterly reports, or even like the updates, like you coming and providing that update. It's very helpful.
And at that quarterly update, are we requesting a financial report as well, or just leaving that at the annual report?
I think that's, so this has. Morphed, I don't know what the word
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So this, I mean, I tried to kind of say this at the, what happened in '06, there was tremendous communication and participation on behalf of the chamber and matters of the city. And there was a concern later on that there wasn't. And so a way to encourage that participation was to have quarterly reports. Right? And then that, so, but that didn't have any financial implications. That was just, we want to know what's going on.
It was really what the city council was used to that. I can speak, having now attended over 20 years of city council meetings. There was somebody at the meeting, every meeting with a 5-minute presentation on what was going on, what was coming up, what they'd done, and then what was coming up. I mean, so it was like, and nobody never gave it, I mean, it was just done.
And as well as if there were any matters of city concern, if at the chamber, so if there was, let's use current events,
Mhm.
dispensaries.
Right.
Does the chamber have an opinion on dispensaries located in downtown?
And I'm
Or
gonna
anywhere.
chime in. I'm
Is
gonna
there-
chime in and echo that. Before I ran for city council and I'm seated, I was attending city council meetings and I attended them for 13 years. And that person from the chamber was at every city council meeting and was there, even if it was just to give a small statistical update or provide information. That person was there to, if there was something on the agenda that the chamber supported for the business person, that individual would get up and speak on behalf and indicate whether they would be supportive of that business or the change, the transition, or whatever was going on. So what they're saying will date me going back to sitting in the audience of that individual voicing and coming forth. And there was a lot of participation at that time. years ago. And then when there was a change made, I know for the lack of participation maybe, or no longer having that, that's hearing it in the council chambers for having that person to come in and report and give information. That's how long that was. But again, here we're gonna bring it to the table here to where it is we're going with it now. And with the changes that have been made, I appreciate, again, the $35,000 was done before my time on the annual. And it was given after this report, and the statistic, it wasn't a statistical report. It was a report that was distributed, because I remember reading it in council chambers of everything that had been done during the year, and provided all the information and all the activities. But that was done at the end, and that's where that transition came. And Yeah.
And the kind of. So every council meeting would say, here's what happened since here's what happened since I was at the last meeting. And, this mixer, we had 100 people. And then look forward, because in the next, and it was one of these look back, look forward, always at every meeting, right? And if there was anything of, I remember the chamber sought the city's support for, there was a discussion about regional prevailing wage. Because we only have LA and San Francisco. And there was a Central Valley, the chambers actually started working together on a third geographical prevailing wage. And the chambers were running with that and sought city support. And that's an example where the chamber came to the city and said, can you lend political support to this effort to try to have a central California prevailing, we have San Francisco and LA, and it's not really a descriptor of the central. And so there were things, and that's where DAC, that was where the intersection of DAC was as well, which is looking at legislation and what is things that are a mutual concern to the business community as well as the city, and whether that, so there was a lot of intersections to that. And then when that, that every meeting look back, look forward, and then it began, okay, what's even happening? So then it became a quarterly, what have you done in the last 3 months?
that could throw us a little history.
And then that even then changed, because it was a, what have we done the last 3 months from cash flow? Okay, so that 35,000 at the end, can we break that into quarterly?
Right.
Now I'm gonna come back. With the annual and the plan, did that answer
Yes.
where it is you want to go, so we can?
Yeah.
Well, I think
Yes,
what's
thank you.
interesting is
I
that
just wanted
it
to
would be good
Yeah.
if,
make
when there's that annual report or whatever it is, which is, all right, is that great? What needs to happen?
I mean, it could be done all at once,
yes.
because you
Okay.
could, I mean, you could be, here's here's the report of what occurred, and provide your annual report, and then, yeah.
I think
Here's
for
our
the
plan for
city
next year.
side, it would give us something to track. We already know what to expect, and it would give you guys something to follow and then kind of update, like, hey, this isn't gonna work out, but, I know we said we were gonna work on this, but, you guys know what's going on,
So we're
so.
basically setting expectations every single year so that you guys know what we're doing and you're okay with it, and then we do a progress report on what we did the last year on the expectations that we're getting.
And it'd probably be something you already have anyways,
Mhm.
an annual, like a
I'm guessing
plan,
you're setting
goal.
expectations anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you're really just reporting on whatever it
Yes.
is that you're
Whatever
already
it is that
doing.
we're setting. Yep.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need, for me, I'm not gonna speak for the whole council, but I felt like the short updates are great. I mean, that was enough information to see, give us an understanding of what's going on, especially if it's regular. I think for me, I had no idea of what was going on. I was a new council member, but I was really looking forward to the chamber, that because of the businesses, because of what the city's going through, that was one of the things I was really looking forward to. So not having that was kind of difficult, so I just think it'll help all around. Plus the public will be able to hear also.
Yeah. Serves as a dual promotion, right? You're able to, one more way to get the word out.
Okay. So we'll continue with the
Okay.
chamber responsibilities. We're on number 3, the printing and distribution of informational pamphlets and brochures. I don't have a problem with that.
That's all from the
From the
original.
other.
So actually, all three are really from the
Exactly,
original.
okay. And B, all duties and responsibilities relating to the following: locating, scheduling, coordinating, and programming for Centennial Parks Friday night activities for April, May, and June, except for Fair and Iris Festival weekends. The city will provide logistical support. Any questions on that?
Well, I guess the big question would be, do we want to put in the, do we want to mention the Iris Festival weekend specifically, since it's not going on anymore, right?
That's what I was gonna say, the Iris Festival, we don't, so. We haven't had the Iris Festival.
Well, okay, so the question there, I mean, we're talking about that as though it's something that's just gone away and isn't coming back. Is that what the city's thoughts on that is? I mean, we've had the pandemic. That's, I mean, plain and simple, that's why we didn't have it the last 2 years.
Yeah.
I
Are you guys
mean,
wanting to still have it?
well, I don't think it was ever the
We've had
chamber's
this-
intention to never have it again.
We have had internal discussions, just calling it something different, because of the Sutton or whoever left, and having it be more of a regional, maybe it be an orange festival or something that's more citrus, something that's more local than an iris. And so that, we've talked about that, but still having a festival, but a rebranding of it, yeah.
I mean-
This gets to the comment I made at the council meeting, which is we're in a redesign of Main Street right now. You only get to do this every 30, 40 years, right? So this is one of those things that's gonna last a generation. It's gonna be a generational project, which in the design of it, the plan, you know, we learned some things from COVID. So converting some of the larger planners into having outdoor seating areas that are, you know, because we found that through the outdoor dining stuff was really challenging for some of the Main Street. So having outdoor seating availability in some of those planners, the larger ones we've identified and look at and amending them, but then what's the theme? Because the theme of Main Street has been irises, which is tag team on this. So if there's a change in that, do we change? Say citrus, do we go to a citrus theme in the planters? Because this is the chance you have to make those changes. And I know the conversations, we're gonna need a lot of Main Street dialogue in that, and, you know, we have the US Forest Service is building new headquarters here on Morton Avenue, and it's having a visitor center, which they're trying to encourage forest tourism. You know? So yeah, there's a Sierra thing. Sierra about that, right? There's a cross brand in there stuff. So the field's open, and the city's building a really big pocket, I guess I would say. So how do we fill it? The intersections are all going to have decorative asphalt in them, but they have an artistic element. So what's the theme? You know, what goes in there?
So how do we get involved in that so that we're a part of that too? So that
Should be strategic planning, and you know, chambers on Main Street. You know, that era, this is a $5 million project plus.
is that
Just
meetings
more
that
into it.
Christina should be going to? And when are those?
Well, we had one before COVID. We did
Okay.
an outreach and got some feedback, and you know, in large part that was, you know, here's your construction season. But you know, as with anything, everybody will tell you what color the drapes should be in the house. So I think that will be, so in the end, there's going to have to be some recommendations, and then brought to council.
I'd say as we first started the project under design, the chamber president and myself actually walked Main Street together and passed out invitations to public meetings. How integrated that relationship.
Okay.
So I mean, this is the first leg of the project, which is from Morton to Putnam. This is I'm in the Bermuda Triangle. Geographically challenged.
I'm just directionally challenged all the time.
The first phase goes, we're looking at next summer. So
Okay.
we're now in that horizon this year, trying to get some input on but landscaping is really easy compared to.
So going
That's true.
back to the Iris Festival, do we want to just leave as community or citrus? Do we want to be specific? Do we want to say community festival and then be name specific?
Community is probably a better
Mhm.
idea. Yeah.
Community festival weekends, and then we go back and when there's changes.
So
Okay,
that is a change from what the current one, because I think the Friday night stuff has 2 seasons, right? It's April, May, and June, and then September, October.
okay. Yes, and but now we go into number 2 of that, and it says planning and coordinating the annual community festival. So if we have community festival weekends, are we going with the redundancy of wordings?
Well, I think.
Are
there
they
were-
2 separate things?
No, it's the same thing. I think we changed it there. We just hadn't changed it in the fair, in the Iris. When we were noting the Iris Festival weekend for the exclusion. I think that is supposed to be the community festival is isn't it? Or is that
Well,
Pioneer?
no,
Is that Pioneer?
that was-
I
Is
don't
that
know.
what it
I'm not.
Oh,
Iris is April.
oh, October, you're right. That's gotta be Pioneer then. You're right.
Last October Community Festival was the Arts Festival.
Okay,
So
the
can you say a
October-
spring community festival
Yep,
on the top
And
and
a
then?
fall one. I think it's a good idea.
Okay, spring and fall. All right. We'll go on to number 3, providing any other assistance that may be mutually agreed upon from time to time during the period of this agreement. Then we'll go into C, activities promoting and supporting the city, Porterville as a gateway to the Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks, including, not limited to, efforts such as the Mighty 190 program.
I make a recommendation that it not be national park, but national forest and national monument.
So you want, what's, I'm
That's
sorry, what
actually,
was that?
that's
Jason?
actually the mission of the US Forest Service. So it's this, what he said.
Yeah. Sequoia National Forest and Sequoia National Monument.
Sequoia National Forest. And Sequoia National Monument. Ooh, giant sequoia.
Not the small ones.
Well, this is a branding opportunity. The only place in Tulare County you can see giant sequoias in Tulare County on the one hand. Everything else, and this is the big rub with Tulare County, they promote everybody leaving Tulare County to go to Fresno County. If they were promoting their own county, they'd be promoting, this area here where you can actually see giant sequoias in Tulare County, not.
Okay. And we'll go into D, activities providing support and assistance to the local businesses in the community, aiding in navigating the current events/issues. For example, the development of tools and programs to assist local businesses, particularly smaller businesses, in continuing to engage with customers in light of the COVID-19 crisis and the current economic recession. Okay, with that one. Vic, no. And E, on a blank, furnish an activity reports to the city covering the programs and activities.
You know,
for the-
before we jump real quick.
Okay,
Mark, I was just
Yes.
going, so
Go
looking
back.
at it, just because I'm trying to think about making this as
okay,
like living, and so we don't have to go back and go why we put that in there. Since we're referring to a current economic recession,
yes.
do we want to say and the current economic conditions, and that way it's,
Yes.
okay, because then it can change. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. That word was bothering
Favorite
me.
changes, good. All right,
Do you want to specify COVID-19 or do you want to make it a little more broad there too?
Yeah.
In light of the current economic conditions, because that can
Yeah.
be very
in
generic.
light of the. current-
Let's take that out. What a difference a few months makes.
It, yeah.
I think we thought it was never going to end back then. It may not. We may wish it was back.
No, we thought it was gonna end, and this is gonna be just a short term thing. Yeah.
Okay, then we'll go on to E. On a blank furnish An activities report to the city covering the programs and activities for the reporting period.
So this is what, how
A
often?
specific emphasis on sufficient relevant information to satisfy the terms and intent of this agreement is heretofore enumerated. The chamber shall also furnish the city with copies of its annual financial reports within 30 days after they are prepared.
This goes back to Kelly's comment of having the annual financial report, and annual plan, setting expectations.
Mhm.
When is that going to happen? Is that in October? That when it's historically been done?
Yes, right? No? When have we done it?
Well,
I don't
I
remember. I
think
should
it's-
remember.
I think it's been all over the place. And I think that's one of the, having something time definite probably, because you look
Probably
at the
pri-
original agreement, it was, and I think.
September
it-
1st was when we were making the
Is that,
payment.
Our fiscal year ends October
this is why,
31st. It's
this
wacky.
is why this came
Okay.
up because of the chamber's fiscal year not coinciding with the city's
Okay.
fiscal year.
Our fiscal
We
year
were
is
on
March.
July
I must
1,
have thought it
June
was September 30th. I'm like, well, I.
No, that would be normal.
30th. So this, I knew there was, so this is a matter of lack of synchronicity between the chamber and the city's
Yeah,
financials.
okay.
Mhm.
Because we
Okay.
make
Yeah.
budgetarily July 1, June 30.
Mhm.
So then when should we prepare this? If you're wanting it ready for budget times.
I think that's like, well, May 15th of each year, so you, generally speaking, this is kind of where it ended up, is that the report, so the city has a hearing on its proposed budget. So preliminary budget is proposed to the council first meeting in June, with the public hearing the second. So that's usually, so here's the preliminary budget, and there is all the different activities of the city, and that's when the chamber provided its report. That's what I say by May 15th, so it's presented its report, and so as the city council adopted its budget, it also adopted its activities. And so that's kind of why that's.
Yeah.
It doesn't sync up with your budget, but it syncs up with the city's budget from that reporting standpoint.
So by May 15th? Or May 31st, or what do you want?
I think it's, I would make sense to do May 15th because then it gives you time, it gives it
Exactly,
time for
council.
the council's consideration. I'd recommend earlier than later.
But yeah, because when would the agreement start then? June, like we would want it to start June.
So that's the,
Or July 1st, which is when the budget or the
almost
new
all of
fiscal year
our,
starts.
see, this isn't, so financially, the cities run July 1, June 30. The budget, the city's budget runs that way, but your agreement doesn't have to. Most of your agreements do, that you are financially obligated to are July 1, June 30.
Okay.
Almost all,
Question.
not all of them. That's why I want to say there's outliers, as if some as like are August and that sort of thing. But typically, I would say in large part, your agreements run July 1 to 30 because it coincides with your budget. So fair to say, you got the same in a lot of your stuff, which is odd considering the federal budget calendar is different. So
And I would say we have, grant expenditures that they may run that way, but the expenditure actually may not take place until October because we may not actually get funds from the federal government. So yeah, several other ones.
but it just in full candor, a large majority, there's July 1. Doesn't mean it has to.
I mean, does it need to be in proximity? I mean, it seems like the issue is just a regular update. I mean, if the update comes when the finances are finalized and prepared and that determination is made later, that should be okay.
Well,
shouldn't
the
it?
purpose of it is let's say, so you have this, we have this plan and it's 35,000 now. Well, perhaps the request is 50,000 because we're gonna do X. and was the
Right.
city.
If you're wanting to get the council to approve it as part of their budget process, you want to do it prior to.
Yeah.
Well, no, I understand that,
Yeah.
but the prior to would be well prior to, if we're talking about October.
It'd be way in advance.
In
Because
advance.
otherwise, yeah.
I would recommend May 15th at the latest. That's just my,
Well, if that's what you're
From a
comfortable
budget
with, I'm just,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just throwing that out there, so, okay.
All right, so we go on May 15th. And then B, engage on a regular basis with the chamber as follows. And I'm looking at legal counsel on this one.
So I'm sorry, where are you?
I'm on B. engage
Oh,
a
on
reg-
B. Okay, well, just before we go on, are we gonna have the annual
Oh.
payments be made on or before September 1st of each year?
Oh, okay, such annual payment shall be made on or before September. Are we gonna, let me ask this question.
Did we finish E? My,
Eh?
Oh, that's
May
where I got
15th.
Yeah, we
lost.
kind of jumped, oh, maybe I jumped. It's my
Yeah,
fault.
okay,
Sorry,
I thought we were on.
you're right. Didn't mean to throw everybody off there.
okay.
Furnish annual activity report on the. So that's the annual report and the plan. So activity report and annual plan. Is that too far in advance, I guess, of your annual, or will you guys be able to, I mean,
this is where you're.
or do you want to do an annual plan after that? Yeah, I don't know.
Well, we can create an annual plan for the city.
I was gonna say,
It may need
if
to
the
be
purpose of that,
updated,
yeah.
it would make sense that it coincide with the budget reporting and all that sort of thing. Christina,
We can do it.
I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn and then realize there's,
We can absolutely do it. The thing that's going on right now is there's events that haven't happened, should be happening, and then they get added on. Quarterly reports is the perfect time to say, hey, I know I told you this, but
Yes.
such and such committee group wants this, and we can do it, so we're going to. So as long as council's okay with hearing new items, it's not a problem.
Yes.
That's fine. All
I
right,
have a question on the financial reports.
sure.
Those are just regarding the funds that we give over, correct? Or is it typically a financial, okay,
It's typically been, here's the profit loss
Okay.
statement, here's balance sheet.
then I have another question to complicate things more. Are they, will they have that if their fiscal year is still in progress?
Well, I don't know. Question asked.
It would have to be a
sorry.
special, it would have to be a special one, because it wouldn't be our annual, it would be our almost our mid-year one that you guys would be seeing.
So I think the agreement accounted for that. So it said, will produce, so do you create a year-end report?
Yeah, so it would be 30 days after it's prepared, which is why it was put in that way, but that doesn't coincide with your budgets. So we could have an annual plan for you that would not include our annual financial report, and the annual financial report would only be once we get our
Mhm.
fiscal year done, which would be by the end of the year. So it's kind of two different things going on. If you guys want to
Yeah.
have a plan at by May 15th, that says this is what we're going to be working on the next year. You can have our quarterly finances just as normal, but as far as our annual,
But the annual, so your.
The
you
annual
said end of
financial.
October Is end of October,
I think it's end of
but
October.
when do you? I'm more customary to, the city's got to have we have to do something. Unaudited
Can-
actuals by December, right? I mean, that's kind of, we have times that we have to turn everything on.
yeah, I mean, can I suggest this? We need to pin down what it is. I think we kind of understand, generally speaking, what the issues are. I think Julie and I can hash this out after we both learn the facts on the ground, and then put it back in a red line that the council can review. I mean, in terms of just hashing out the timelines and where that,
And I, this gets to what is actually in the report. I guess that becomes,
Right.
this has been, when this, a lot of this, Julie's got more wars, I call it, has more wars than I have in this one, but this had to do with whether or not it was audited financial reports, right? Because you have to have an audit.
We don't have audited. Ours is CPA reviewed for our bylaws,
Do they,
which is different than
Right,
audited.
because you're
Right.
nonprofit, not a public agency.
but you have to do something for the IRS. You have to have, as part of that. And then that question is whatever,
Right.
which and I wasn't in charge when this all was, when they say this, I wasn't the manager when this was all being, but there was a push to get whatever, after your CPA goes through everything, what is, what's their report, which I don't know that that's the requirement, but I just raise it because this has been the question.
The requirement for nonprofits is just well, I don't even know. I'd have to look and see if it's considered public. I'm not sure it's considered public information.
And that was why it hasn't. been provided, because
I can look at it though.
but this goes to the
Yeah.
substance of what is provided, which is hopefully as a candidate of a picture, I guess.
Well, just
Given
because-
that public funds are involved, this is, the
That's
basis
right.
is that
Correct.
there's significant public funds involved, and therefore, to what extent is there transparency in that? Activity?
Right, we can look at it. I mean, I know that there are certain state requirements for nonprofits too, as far as what they have to be able to be accountable for financially. So we can just make sure that those line up. And that whatever, can be legally required should be required.
And this goes back to when we had that meeting that you said it was not very good. I thought it was good, but anyway, that's my 2 cents. There were parts that were bad, but I thought it was pretty good. Some clarification on
It had its highs.
It had its highs, it had-
The median was
just like
good.
any meeting. But as far as the financial, I thought that the council had said that they wanted specific for the funds that the city was doing, that they wanted to have accountability for that, not necessarily for everything, but just accountability for the city funds. So are you saying you want all of it or just the city portion that is the public funds,
So the expectation in the past has been it's
everything?
because
So I thought from that meeting, I understood that you wanted the public and funds, like of that 35,000, how did you spend that 35,000 and have it be specific? I'm only
well,
bringing it up, not that I carry the weight, I just,
Yeah,
it's both.
it's both.
It's everything, and then how.
Well, I mean, I remember
If you
where
want
that,
it
I
di-
remember where
mean,
that
if
was
you
coming
want it
from,
different, you
but
need to say it.
yeah.
well, no, I'm just saying that's how I understood the meeting when we had the city council, so that's why I was,
Yeah,
that's why I'm
this
trying
is
to
a
understand
historical
which
thing.
one do you want?
Well,
We had a
That's why
couple
you thought
council
it was a good
members that
meeting.
were actually.
That's why I thought it was a good meeting.
These same council members routinely voted no on the chamber
This was a
allocation
three-
anyways.
It was the budget had a 3-2 vote on it,
Yeah,
on this issue.
and they always, and so they were, there was a strong, these particular two had a strong interest in also requiring the complete financials, and they not only wanted that, they wanted them to be audited because that was.
And they were, but
Yeah.
that wasn't subject to public disclosure, right? I mean, it was stated to the members of council of that. So, no, this sole issue has caused 3-2 votes on city budgets. And $100 million budget, this one issue has been 2 no votes. in the past.
It
For
caused
a number
us
of
to
years.
separate that
Yeah,
as a
we had to
separate
take it
item
up
so that it would not cause the whole budget to go down, to go down.
Well, I appreciate the work that everyone's doing on this right now. and
Oh, of course,
because
this is why we're
it's,
here.
Yeah.
This is
I
why
can
we're
see
here.
why it's
Yes.
not, it's confusing, I guess, or not clear.
Well, we're in a, Julie, I think Julie would say, I mean, I keep looking at Julia because
Yeah.
I've been through this since 2009, Julia's been through it longer than that, and this has gone through iterations by chamber. I mean, you look at this, she and I were talking about this in terms of how to best prepare for today. And this has had influences from both the chamber, from their interests, as well as in different councils' interests. And so they might
Different
sit there
councils
and
with
go,
very
"Well,
different personalities.
what is it you want?" We both share in the responsibility of a lack of clarity here.
Right.
I guess is my point. There's been here that things that have been very important to the chamber that has kind of become, at Iris Festival and things of that nature, which is, okay, well, here's how we're gonna do promotions. And then the city on the other side, which is had what we want to do, music on Main. That was the big football in 2008 was music on Main. The Centennial Park being new. And who was gonna do that? Was the city gonna do that? The chamber gonna do it? The chamber wants to do it, and we need another $5,000. That's how we went from 30 to 35,000. That was a big political football, I call it, because it was we had this new park and we want to do activities on Main Street. So you have here kind of a historical quilt of stuff that's all been kind of put together. That is mishmash because you have a different fiscal year than we do. You have had interests that the chambers had, that the city's been supportive of, and vice versa.
I'm going to be very forthright. We want the chamber to succeed. We want it for the interest of all members of this community, for the businesses, and regardless, whether they're business owners or not, it is, as I stated that night of that entertaining council meeting, that I chose to be very proactive versus reactive. And bottom line is, this is why we're here. And I can appreciate it because as Councilmember Carrillo stated, she's new on the dais and she had questions and concerns. My history goes back to 13 years prior to me being on council and being involved, knowing that the chamber has gone through and has blossomed and has been a metamorphosis. And then there has been some changes over the years. I can see that. And I'm on the outside looking in. I've been very proactive with other chambers to that regard. I know that it is a large, once you've had the COVID, you've gone through all the trials and tribulations that have affected all of us, because that includes us, and we're doing our best to be, again, as my words that night, I'm choosing to be proactive versus reactive. And in the efforts of collaborations we have to have and strengthen our communication and not have assumptions. It's very simple as that, because
Well, and I would say the city values its chamber more than, I mean, there's only two cities that support its chamber, which is Tulare and Porterville, and I think Tulare's is like 15,000. I think they were talking about perhaps increasing it, but I mean, there is, Visalia doesn't provide any, it's doing its own thing. It's kind
they're
of,
structured
and
very
so
differently.
from in terms of, I mean, if money is support, it's the most support. So, and it's appropriated in the budget passed by the city council with 35,000 appropriated in this year's budget. I think this comes down to where are we together in promoting this community, especially with some current challenges, and what are the future things, and plus current future opportunities, like enormous opportunities right now.
I'd suggest this on the financials. Why don't you guys figure out what you're comfortable with, and we'll start there, and then I'll look at it and see what because I know there are legal requirements as to what you have to provide to the state.
And I have some examples of what the chamber has provided in the past.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. May I go on to the next one now?
Yes.
Okay. Responsibilities. As consideration for the above mentioned responsibilities, the city shall, during the term of this agreement, pay the chamber the sum of 35,000 blank per year. Such annual payment shall be made on or before September 1 of each year, commencing in. However, such annual payment shall not be made until the city receives and reviews the annual activity report referred to in paragraph C for the preceding reporting period.
Which is what we need to define.
We need to
Right.
define that.
Should
We
be
need to
preceding, not proceeding, but if we keep that language. It's not-
We need to define that, and then define whether it's going to be a one-time payment of 35,000 as to how its effect would be for the chamber versus the quarterly payments. That's something that would be a dialogue, because if it's a one-time and then you're doing the annual report, you're doing a financial report, at least you have the one-time obligate, the one-time release of funds of the 35, as it was done in the past, but I don't know how its effect was with the quarterly payments and more reporting and more information during the COVID process, so.
Now, is that paid out in arrears or is that?
So the way it was done, it was at so for the city, now that it gets into, again, budgets. So well, if you look at the original agreement, you have to go back to the original agreement, it stipulated how it happened, which is you shall do it by a certain date, and the city shall pay, I want to say it was like August, or this is predates me.
But it was in arrears, is that right?
Well, it was after, I
After
call
the
it
fact.
after the fact.
After
We're
the
gonna do
fact,
all
yeah.
this stuff
Yeah.
for an end of the year payment.
If you do all this, then you get this, right? It's not, we'll give you this and go and do this, right?
Right,
Right.
although, I mean, it was until the city receives and reviews, it never actually said receives, reviews and approves, so I don't know,
Well, we have-
quite honestly,
It was a payment for services rendered.
Right.
Not
yeah.
payment,
Future.
pay for dinner and not have it yet,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so it was, here's services rendered, and then we agree it's 35,000, here's the things that you're gonna do, and then you get it upon you. And that's where it became, this is where the conundrum of our budget cycle comes in, because when this came as, it came because of an increase. Chamber wanted an increase from 30 to 35,000, it requested that, and that's where it was, the whole centennial programming became a big football, because it was gonna be a city activity, and then it was, well, the chamber wants to do that, and so then there was like a compromise was struck, which was, okay, we'll increase it from 30 to 35,000, chamber will do the programming, and the city will help with it, just will support the setting of chairs. It was spoken in that agreement. That was the compromise in that request. So like the city attorney said, when we develop a budget, we need to know it. Because it's the budget I present to the council needs to be aware of it June 1st when we present it to them. So that's why you back up to May 15th.
Right.
You need to know what, because you may ask for more, and that has 5,000. Again,
I think
that was
that's why there's a number on
2006.
this. My draft, I think Rob was somebody was throwing out numbers, and I had it scribbled on. the bottom of this. So, yeah, I mean, that's the other way you can look at this too. I mean, it's written ambiguously. It's written like lawyers wrote it, but it basically, you could actually also read it to be, you could read it as payment for services rendered. You could also read it as you're actually getting paid prospectively for the next year, but that it's with the idea in mind that you're also being reviewed on your prior year, and that amount could change based on whatever, on the sort of the council's feeling about that prior year. So there's a couple, it really just, I mean, I guess it's how, whether we're paying prior to, or it's really more for, that's you than us. It's just when are we paying, giving you the money? Is it possible that the activities from the prior year affects what happens that next year with what the council's going to pay? I think, yeah, under the way this read, that was definitely a potential. And I think it did from time to time alter it over the course of the years, from what I can remember.
Yeah, so the reporting period was from May 1st through April 30th. That was the activity. That's, I guess, a lawyer term.
Right.
You're employed in these activities from May 1 through April 30th, and then you come provide a report by May 15th, which if the council is satisfied with
Then they appropriate in their budget whatever it is that they're going to pay
well,
you.
They pay you.
Right.
Well, no, and they pay, because it says here, when it gets into such annual payments shall be made on or before September 1st, which probably coincides then.
Because
You
that's
said
when they
it's
get
October.
that's when they get their.
I don't know.
annual
I
reports
didn't-
done.
Again,
Yeah, I
we
know.
have
Yeah.
patches
That's-
of cloth that are in this quilt here.
Right.
And none of this has to be
Yeah.
the way it is. We can change any of that if it doesn't make sense.
So you do your report.
Yeah.
This is what the agreement says that was agreed to by the parties that your reporting period was May 1 through April 30th. And
you get
then,
funded September
and then by,
1st.
before September 1st.
Yeah.
So we were being left with, okay, what's in our budget for the next
Yeah.
year? So,
I don't, yeah.
And our fiscal is July
July
1st
1.
through June 30th.
so this was fully intended as part of the city's budgetary process.
Right.
And so if there's gonna be any changes, that it's addressed in the budget that we prepare, preliminary budget presented to the council.
But when we budget and when we pay can be different.
Right.
That doesn't matter.
Doesn't
It's really
all
when do we
budgets,
budget
yeah.
for it? We want to know
Right.
what it is that you guys have done and what your plan is so that so the council can make their decisions on budgeting. That's really what that was
Right.
about.
It seems like it makes sense to do, so if we do the May 1st through April 30th reporting period, and then, or whatever, wait, ignore that. If we do the city budget timeline and then do the May 15th deadline, because that's when we'll need it to get it approved to go July 1st. And then when they do their report at the end of the year, it should reflect the whole year of what they accomplished. And then that's where a payment would be made. I feel like because that's kind of saying, we
Uh-huh.
accomplished all this. And what do you want for that next year? What are you shooting for? Like, here's our plan.
Well,
here's
that's
the
why we
amount.
did is if you look at the amended agreement, we said after the report is done,
Mhm.
but no later than the first of the month of the following month or something. like that. There's
Within
some-
30 days after they're
Yeah,
retired
it's-
is what it
it's so-
says. Yeah.
So
It
in-
seems odd to pay for, well, you guys did this, so we'll give you this money, when really it would seem like you want to support.
I actually didn't, I'll be honest with you, I know it, that's the way the city staff reviewed it. I actually looked at it as it's not really payment after the fact. It's actually just, it's
Preparing
review
for
after the fact,
okay.
but it's payment for the next year.
Yeah, and that's how
But, you
that's
know,
how I.
I think, and maybe what ended up happening.
I'm fine with that as well. I
It's
just-
possible
this is
that
what
from
we
the
observed.
chamber standpoint, when things got tight, it started feeling like you guys were getting paid after the fact, but I don't know that that's the way it had been in years prior.
Gotcha.
That
Well,
might have
and-
been just a reality of the financial
Yeah,
circumstances.
I mean, I
and
think,
that's what led to the quarter. right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's-
Yeah. that's
And
what
then that
I-
led to you guys requesting it quarterly,
Right.
because you guys felt like you were getting paid after the fact, but I don't think that was really what was actually going on way back in the day. I don't know though. And we are not personally attuned to
No.
what's going on with the finances and the cash flow of the chamber, so.
Right.
Because that amount of money, whatever it is, if say it's 35,000, shouldn't go to pay for those entire events. They should just be to supplement and support those
See, this is
events.
the question, which is, does not, yeah, I mean, there's kind of wobbler language, I think you guys would call it in there, right?
Yeah.
It says shall not
Fully support.
fully support.
It can go to those things. It just cannot be the only thing paying for those things.
So I'm gonna go back. 35,000 or the quarterly payments.
What do you guys, I mean, what would be the chamber's interest there?
That's why I'm bringing it.
well,
here.
I mean, I think you're dealing with not the longest of institutional memory among the people that are here. Certainly not as long as yours. So, I mean, we kind of have to go back, take a look at it, see, I mean, do we need a determination? Because it sounds like you guys are fine with either. So I think if we go back, we look at it, we can make that determination, and then it shows up in the red line that you look at later on.
Thank you. Okay, now, item B, engage on a regular basis with the chamber as follows.